This is the Rush Discuss, where the discuss is Rush. Hello and welcome to this showdown, part 2 of the Rush Discuss battle between La Villa Strangiato and the Main Monkey Business. So in part 1, we had our group of musical experts to break down these songs. We had Doug Helvering, a composer, give his insights onto compositional aspects of these songs. We had Vicky and Dennis, the guitarists, to break down different aspects of the guitar. We had Steve from Junk Drummer TV break down stuff. Or no, sorry, not Steve. We had Jim Benner of Rush Fans to break down. So all these guests.
We have a lot of good guests everywhere.
No, but Jim did an excellent job of just taking us through the entire song and breaking down each section. If you haven't already listened to the songs, do it, because we aren't going to do what we usually do in our episodes of playing the first 30, 40 seconds, because that doesn't really give you any sort of idea about these songs, because there's so many changes.
And listen to the previous episode too, of the interviews and the breaking down. It's really good preparation for today. It was really great for us.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, it makes it even harder to choose, but it was really cool hearing their perspectives on these songs, and I don't know where this is going today, so.
Yeah, and it's interesting because so far a lot of the people we've talked to have really been on the side of La Villa Strangiato is the pinnacle, it's the best one, no matter what. But I was looking at an article the other day, and I forget who wrote it, what publication it was, but it was just some article online, like some classic rock website, I think, that was talking about all the instrumentals of Rush and ranking them. And this particular person actually ranked Main Monkey Business in spot number 1 as their pick for the best Rush instrumental, with La Villa Strangiato in the second place position. And I think Leave That Thing Alone was down in number 7 or something. That's interesting.
They were next to each other, and that's our pairing.
Yeah.
So funny.
But I think it's just, and the reasons that they gave was that because La Villa Strangiato, it's epic and everything, but Main Monkey Business is so concise in its complexity that there's still discernible movements, but that you still get all the complexity of La Villa Strangiato, but condensed into 3 minutes less than...
Isn't that what Jim said in the interview, right? He said that the Main Monkey Business is complexity in a condensed way, and it's very true. And how do we want to approach this?
Well,
this conversation today? It's a lot to tackle, because in my mind, La Villa, I mean, yes, it's an instrumental, but in my mind, it's one of the epics. And so it's like, is it even in is it even? It sounds, okay, I can't talk. It feels like it's in its own tier. Not that it's better than anyone else, but that it's just different. And so it's hard for me to approach this battle today.
Because I can definitely see that, because, it's from Hemispheres.
Yeah.
To me, that album is the pinnacle of their, not necessarily of their virtuosity, because they highlight their virtuosity in everything they do, but that was the album that they did the most complex things in long form, and pushed the limits of what their capability was. Because after they did it, they were so burned out, and they're like, we're never doing an album like this again.
Yeah.
And when you listen to that album and you hear all the all the stuff that's going on, especially now that you've heard heard people talk about all these different instruments, and you've heard discussion about composing, and so you have a little bit more understanding of what it takes to compose music and what it takes to perform on those instruments. When you go back and listen to Hemispheres, you see why it would be something that they would never want to do again, because to bring themselves to that level and to just lay it all out there, it's exhausting just listening to it when you're really trying to analyze it.
It's so funny because obviously I love La Villa Strangiato. It's a great track, but so often when I'm shuffling all of Rush, I will skip it not because it's not amazing, but because I don't think I have the right mental space to give it the respect it deserves to fully like commit to listening to it. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like this song deserves my attention right now, and I don't have the attention right to do that, so I'm going to skip it because it's that is the difference.
Yeah.
For me.
Like, I was that actually reminds me, I was on a job and I gave this recommendation to a friend of mine who he's not a fan of Rush. He actually hates the spirit of radio. He just can't stand any of that. But I was like, okay, you say that it's the voice that gets you. So why don't you try La Villa Strangiato? Give that a whirl. Tell me what you think. And then he proceeds to listen to it in his earbuds as he's painting, and then he's like, in the middle of the song, he starts like talking to me, telling me, yeah, that's pretty cool, and like keeps trying to talk to me, and just inside him like dying, like, but you're missing so much just with you talking. And so
you always get mad at that kind of stuff too, though.
I know,
it's like, no,
that's a pet peeve of mine.
I know,
it's like if I
is.
give a recommendation and I tell you like, you need to focus on this, you need to listen to it, and then you're like showing me that you're doing exactly what I said not to do.
I mean, I do that, but I'm also ADD, sorry.
But it's like, yeah, this is a song that you really have to dedicate to listen to understand what's going on. And I would venture to say Main Monkey Business.
Well, I was about to say the same thing. And it's like, well, although Main Monkey Business, I feel like I can put on and listen more passively. However, you dig deep into the Main Monkey Business and you're like, whoa, there's all this complexity that, like we just said before, the complexity that I didn't even know was there. And it gets cooler and cooler the more you listen to it and the more things that you notice each time you listen to it.
Yeah. And it's like I was talking about with Jim, there is an element that I wish had been done just from a personal preference in approaching the music. I feel like the way that Snakes and Arrows was mixed, it really does push everything to the forefront, and it's just kind of like, boom, here it is, which works really well for most of those songs. But Main Monkey Business, to me, I feel like there were some dynamic waves that could have been written a little bit better. And so, and this is just from me listening to it so much, and just there's an element of fatigue by the time you get to the end to me.
You know what?
Just because it pushes so hard, and I wish that sometimes it would let off so that it could make the end part be more of an arrival that you're excited for, rather than like kind of feeling like you just got exhausted.
I think I see what you're saying. I've never thought of it that way, but you're putting into words things that I've experienced while listening to the Main Monkey Business. But at the same time, sometimes I'm in the mood for that, where I want just not to say that the Main Monkey Business is just noise, but I like want noise, and like I'm not in the mood for complexity, dynamic complexity or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm just like, yes, this is sweet, and it just keeps going.
Yeah. It's and I'll actually bring up a part of it real quick that I think illustrates what I wish there was a little bit more of. Because just for me, I love the ebb and flow that they get in a lot of their songs, and I feel like at the start of this track they had a lot of ebb and flow, but then by the end of it, it is surging, and it's really cool compositionally what they're doing. They have a few different musical ideas, and the way that they develop them is, it's not like they're extending them. They have the musical idea, they go to another musical idea, they go to another musical idea, and then they go back to them. And each time they're elaborating on them a little bit. They're adding a little bit more. And so then by the time you get to the end, you're revisiting all this stuff that you've already heard before, but in a way that it's still new. And it's like you can't put your finger on it at first, and it takes a lot of listens to really kind of get a handle on what's making it new by the end of it. And so it's super cool what they're doing. I just wish that there was, whether it was done in the mixing process or in the playing process, I just wish that on this album for this track, they had a little bit more. So a little performance tip that can bring out and accentuate things is you're surging, and then you pull back right before there's a change, so that when you surge into the change, you're better able to appreciate it. And I wish there was a little bit more of that at the end of it, because like I said, the last couple minutes can sometimes feel like it's just stretching it out. If you aren't listening to it closely, and if you're passively listening to it, it can sometimes be like, oh, is it done yet? Unless you're in the mood for it.
Right.
And so it is kind of a weird thing where it's like sometimes you're in the mood for that, like you said, to just have that big boom, all out, here it
wall
is.
Of sound. I mean, the same can be said about the other track we're battling as well. Like all the same things can be said. It's such a subjective conversation that we're having.
But anyway, so at the start of Main Monkey Business, before I forget it, this part is one of my favorites. I actually used this. I was taking an intro to theater class when I was starting out my college experience, which I then dropped out of to pursue audio engineering. But
you have a certificate from a college. You still went to college.
I know, but not in the same.
Not the
way.
traditional route.
Because this was to start off getting an associate's and do that traditional path.
I see what you're
and
saying.
Then I stopped doing that. But
anyway,
part of it we had to do one of the final group project was 3 of you had to design a show, and it was Midsummer's Night's Dream, and we decided to do like an Arabian Nights inspired thing. And so one person was on costuming, one person was on set design, and then I was on sound design. And this is actually what kind of kickstarted my interest in this field. But I used this song for the closing, to go after the closing monologue. So the monologue is going, and I've had a drum beat that was going that had like the Middle Eastern rhythm to it. And then it led into this drum fill here that I'm about to play, just because and then it just hits so hard. It's one of my favorite moments in probably all of Rush, just because it's got such a great, it just has a great space created, and then they fill it just like
play it. Just play it.
I said to get all that out
I know,
there.
you were so excited. Oh, and listening to that with headphones, I've never noticed that little bass
Yeah.
in the background too.
That's what I'm saying. It's just got like everything that you could want. You have the drums. It's almost like the drums make a perimeter around the space that they're about to explode into. It's like,
I know,
and
it's
right at
super
that last hit, you
satisfying.
just have this bass slide.
That's good music making right there.
Yeah.
And good ensemble. We talk about ensemble a lot with Rush.
Yeah.
We're like, that was a beautiful ensemble moment.
Yes. And it's just, and it's those sorts of moments that, to me, keep Main Monkey Business really being a contender in this competition, because on the surface it looks like, oh well, of course it has to be La Villa Strangiato.
We said the same thing about YYZ though.
Yeah.
So
but that's really rip into La Villa Strangiato now.
Where do we start?
This is
we're just staring at our computer screen right now. Sorry.
This is probably one of the greatest compositions ever written. Just because of the ambition that they were able to actually, they had the ambition to just go for it and then to actually pull it off.
Yes. Something Jim said was to remind us, a reminder of what he said was this, in his opinion, was showcasing Neil's ability to compose for drums.
Yeah.
And all of the really cool, like he said, the seamless time changes that you don't even notice are happening. And it was their first instrumental, like you said, like there's so much.
Yeah.
That's all I can say.
And the fact that they went after it in a way that did mirror classical music composition.
Yeah.
And that
it has movements too.
Yeah, the fact that they have movements, the fact that it is obviously programmatic, and so it's influenced by later classical compositions. So, and I hate the fact that it's so murky, like in describing, because classical music is like a blanket term, but then when you actually get into what that kind of music it is, then it gets confused with the classical era.
Right.
And so really with the kind of music that they're most analogous to would be the Romantic era, getting into
I think most people know you meant just classical music in general.
But I'm just saying that as someone who is in both worlds, it bugs me sometimes, and it's like
I understand.
And so that's why sometimes it's hard for me to really.
Disclaimer: we're talking about classical music in general, not the classical era of Mozart.
Just in case there's some other people out there who are like, "Hey, wait a minute."
I don't think so.
But yeah, they've got a story that you can hear that's going throughout, and then just they have, like what Doug talked about, they just have the different themes that come back, and they make sure they spend enough time so that you get to know it well enough before just moving on.
And I'm thinking, as I'm sitting here thinking about the track, what's coming to my mind is what we've talked about in the interviews, all the amazing guitar things that Alex is doing, the textures he's creating, the moods he's creating, the almost like sound effects he's creating. It's like he's playing music, but he's also creating a soundscape, and it's really cool. Like I was telling you about the part that I wanted to bring up in the song. This part is roughly halfway through it, a little over halfway through the song. We're just gonna play it for you, but we'll play it for you, and then I'll talk about why I like this part. So when I hear that part, as a string player, I hear like string pizzicato sound. So pizzicato, for those who are not string players, is when you're plucking the string, which that's what you do when you play guitar. But like in terms of bowed string instruments, when you're plucking, it's called pizzicato. And that's what it sounds like to me. Like there's a string section playing pizzicato, and the drone underneath, or the synth drone underneath, sounds like the double basses playing a drone underneath. And so I can just like imagine it as like an orchestra. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we're guitar for sure. It's building. Now it's into this completely other idea. And it's seamless though. It's not like, well, that was abrupt. It was just like, no, he's subtly building up. But back to the pizzicato, like what a cool texture to create.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a common guitar pluck sound. Like it's not like I've never heard that sound on a guitar before, but the way that it was done and the way in the context with the synth and just the contrast between what was happening, what is about to happen is such a cool moment, and mood and texture and everything is such a cool part.
I think you really summed up what makes Alex great, is because time and time again throughout their entire catalog, when you look at a part that Alex has done and you're just like, there's something about that just makes it so cool. It always gets to, it's not that he's doing any new thing on the guitar. Like these are all elements, but the way he's doing it, I just wouldn't have thought of it.
Yeah.
Because all he's doing there, he's palm muting, which just means that when you're playing the strings, you're just plopping your palm there so that it mutes the string right after you hit it. And which is why it sounds much more like a pizzicato than when you're just plucking an open string.
Well, that's what's a cool thing, is that he has all the things in his tool belt and he uses them in the perfect opportunities to use them in his compositions. And I was like, that'd be like the coolest time to use it, and he did.
But I love, it's so hard to pick a favorite section out of La Villa Strangiato, but A Lurked in Wonderland, which is the name of that section, which of course Alice in Wonderland always cracks me up. But because Lurked, for those of you who aren't deep into Rush lore, Lurked is Alex's nickname that the band came up with. Dirk is Neil's and Pratt is Getty's. But yeah, so A Lurked in Wonderland is the section of where they've had the whole they've had the Strangiato theme there, and then they go into the first guitar solo. But it's so cool because they've just had because they build up from nothing with the start of the song of having just Alex's acoustic guitar doing this crazy run down, and then you have the synths building, everything just one layer getting added that feels very stagnant but building, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're in the dream, and then all of a sudden all that's wiped away, and then you're just left like this barren soundscape, just like this open world that Alex is then able to just come out, boom, and just start doing these swells and lead into this guitar solo. And I love the fact that he approaches the guitar solo in a way that is not typically done. He doesn't just come out wailing. He doesn't just come out like scattering notes everywhere. It's all just guiding you through just this sea of emotion. And so you have these swells, you then have the building, and the backing instruments are building perfectly as well. They're just all so linked together that they're all just surging together, and that's where the complexity comes in. They're adding little bits of complexity as they go, and then you start getting this bluesy solo from Alex, and then you get this surge and this like that's where he starts going and then he pulls back to the palm mute to that section really that cool. Juliann was talking about that we showed you. It's just such a cool thing that then it's like he started from nothing, builds, pulls back but not as far back to then build again and then into the next section. And it's just
so interesting.
Yeah, and it's like you get these changes that seemingly come out of nowhere, and yet they're all linked together. And so by the end of it, you're like, I don't see how that could have gone any other way. And I think that's what makes this such a masterful composition. Is I think the best compositions are ones that you get to the end and it's taking you on this journey, and you look back and you don't have anywhere where you could say, well, I think it might have been a more interesting thing to have changed this way.
Yeah. Because, I mean, there have been times when I've listened to things where I'm like, maybe that was gone differently in my mind. But, yeah for this one, it's like, no, I mean, I can't say perfect, but it is kind of perfect. It just is. Yeah. In whatever way you want to look at it. But...
Because I think it's cool that, you have the start of it where it's got a Spanish style guitar feel. It's got that flavor to it. And then you have the synth feel. And then you have this blues type feel. And then you have just this heavy hard rock feel. And then you get into this jazzy sort of big band feel for a little bit with the Monsters section, which, by the way, that theme, the do 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 do, I think what's the name? Powerhouse, I think, is the name of that tune. Someone can correct me, but I think that's what it was. But they were referencing that, and then they actually got in trouble because it was copyrighted.
Oh.
And so they had to pay for that. Stupid, but
at least they kept it.
But yeah, it's so it's like they're referencing all these different styles of music while doing their thing, which yet again, quintessential Rush. Reference any sort of music that they think is interesting, do it in their way, in their sound, and generally do it in a better way than you've heard.
Yeah, they always nail it. Whatever they do, they just crush it every time. they always do it well.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about the Main Monkey Business again. I'm like, there's so many great moments in that I love. I'm just going to sit here and sigh for the next 10 minutes until I figure out. Because I honestly don't know where I want to go with this in my brain now. Because both of them have amazing elements that I love. But I don't know. See, this is the thing, though. For subjectively for me personally, my personal experience with Rush, which plays a role in how we decide, which is why, again, we always say it's important that you guys are able to figure out what you would have chosen because you might have a different experience. And so that's what we're doing. But anyway, I spent an insane amount of time listening to Hemispheres, like probably most of us have, where I obsessed and binge listened to that album daily for months. And so then I have this different connection to this album. It was one of my favorites for a really long time. I mean, it is always going to be one of my favorites. But I just had this huge Hemispheres phase that I have to keep into account. And so then when I think about the Main Monkey Business and how as much as I love that track so much, I definitely spent a lot less time listening to Snakes and Arrows. I've listened to it a lot more now. And I'm not saying I don't know the album. I do. I know it really well. But it's not like I would stick Snakes and Arrows on and listen to it on repeat. I mean, maybe I would now. It's nothing that I wouldn't want to do. But I just... I don't know why I'm just like rambling about it. But I don't know. So me being so obsessed with Hemispheres for so long, I feel like plays a role in me wanting to choose La Villa. But then also knowing that the Main Monkey Business, even if I didn't dive into Snakes and Arrows as deeply, I always listened to the Main Monkey Business because it was such one of my favorite tracks on the album, honestly. I mean, there's a lot of really good songs on that album. But that was one that I would consistently always want to listen to and be like, oh yeah, when it comes on, when I'm shuffling, I'm like, yeah, the Main Monkey Business is so good. And so that's what's making this difficult. And so, I mean, tentatively, I want to pick La Villa because of all the other things we talked about and the orchestralness of it almost, and also the personal reasons as well. But it's a hard one, though.
Yeah, because a lot of those same things can be said for Main Monkey Business because it has, and it's so weird to say. It's tough to say it because both of them are very, very ensemble driven.
Yeah, I mean they're instrumental,
but I mean as far as like where it showcases the ensemble and not the soloist.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah,
but and I think La Villa Strangiato is the perfect blend of showcasing the three of them doing what they do best, of playing as a unit, and of showcasing their individual talents, because you have that incredible bass fill from Getty, and then you have Neil's incredible drum fills and just like his perfect servicing of the song. So it's like they each get the spotlight put on them for a bit in La Villa Strangiato, while also showcasing just their strength of unity. Main Monkey Business has less of the spotlight put on any one of them. And because even in the guitar solo, I mean, this is a much more mature Alex, obviously, because this is
years later.
decades later.
Literally decades.
And just they're just completely different musicians at this point.
Well, I mean,
and so
I know they weren't actual kids, but I feel like when they did Hemispheres, they were still kids.
And so it's like you get this older Alex who is
seen things.
He's
sorry, go on.
He's playing a part that is servicing the song, even though it's a guitar solo. He's still interacting. It's not just all spotlight on him during this guitar solo. It's like creating this this other flavor that's interacting. And it's just such a different kind of a guitar solo experience. But the whole song, to me, is more showcasing their talents of being an ensemble, of being able to create this soundscape and transport you to a different place. Because I mean, the whole album of Snakes and Arrows just transports you to a different place. It makes you feel like you're just more, on the eastern side of things. You're just, because they've borrowed so much from that style of music, and they just, I mean, that's a running theme throughout all that. But the music of the Main Monkey Business is just so different from all the other instrumentals. So it really stands out to me. And I think it's cool having their last large instrumental with their first instrumental, and getting to see how great musicians have progressed throughout their lives, to be able to pair those together and just see they get to see the progression from these outgoing and here to make a huge statement and here to just pour everything into our music, just see the youth of them with the Villa, and then come toward in the later part of their careers and see, like, we aren't here to make any sort of huge statement. We're here to play what we love and have a great time doing it. But you still see the passion there. And so it's cool to see, like, the youthful, not arrogance, because they weren't ever arrogant about their music, but there is just kind of underlying arrogance of youth. I don't know if another way to put it. Just
I have like a word on the tip of my tongue that just kind of like when you take risks.
Yeah.
When you're young, but not because you're. Maybe it is because you're dumb, but if you are, not because you're dumb, but because you're just like, well, of course we're just going to do this random thing. Of course, like, you don't think about it as much when you're uninhibited.
Yeah, I guess that's, they didn't have anything holding them back. And so I guess that it's not as much arrogance as it's just letting themselves
like that
go.
Word was a gateway to what we were trying to figure
that's
out.
That's more of what I was looking for. But it's like it's like the parenthetical of La Villa Strangiato and exercise in self-indulgence. And so, I think it's cool to be able to see the progression where they're still able to indulge, but it's not as much about pushing themselves to the absolute limits of their playing.
And something else I'm thinking about, which has nothing to do with what you were just saying, regarding the Main Monkey Business, is I was reading about it, and I think it's so cute that the way they got the name of the Main Monkey Business was something Geddy's mom would say, like, "Oh, this is the Main Monkey Business." Like, I think it's so cute, and it was something that his mom would say. That's so. I just love that too. That's. I don't know if that makes it like we need to choose that one more or anything, but I just thought that was something cute to throw in.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if we pick La Villa Strangiato, everyone will be on our side, and if we pick Main Monkey Business, everyone will be like, what are you thinking? But that's not the point of us.
Well, that's what we talked about with YYZ and leave that.
Yeah, leave that.
Okay, sorry, my brain.
There's been a lot.
Yeah, a lot. I'm also pregnant and my brain doesn't work the same way. Anyway, we said the same exact thing. And a lot of people defend YYZ, but like we still felt like we wanted to choose the other track. So like you said, we don't have to worry about that because we have talked a lot about both of them and we never go in just being biased towards one track at all.
Yeah. And it was a lot harder to do at the start of all of this, but the more that we've done it and the more that we can just be open about how we really feel at the start and then just be able to let the conversation go. I think it's been great for me to be able to see why it is I'm drawn to the ones that I am drawn to and be able to kind of take a step back and let myself take into account those feelings, but then also allow myself to create new feelings about the songs.
It is really cool. It's almost like this is definitely a fun game of choose one song versus the other, but it's also been an exercise of diving into our own true feelings about Rush, I guess. That sounds really cheesy, but like it's true. Like we know a lot of these songs mean a lot to a lot of listeners. All the listeners, obviously, who also listen to our Rush podcast. To all of the listeners of this podcast, we know that these songs mean a lot. And so it is kind of been a cool exercise in, well, what about this song? Because sometimes it is just straight compositionally, this is cool. But then, you know, like me realizing how much I really did like listening to Hemispheres and stuff like that. And so, anyway, it's really cool to be able to explore Rush in that way too.
Yeah.
But now we're still waiting on our decision. I want to choose La Villa. Like, I really do. I love the Main Monkey Business. But I want to pick that one, La Villa, more because of the moments in it that are just so cool.
Yeah.
And also everything else we talked about. I don't want to pick it just because it's cool, but like, you know.
Yeah, I think I'm going to pick La Villa Strangiato as well.
You look so intense right now. Look at the camera with your intense face.
But the reason is because, to me, that section of Alex's first guitar solo, that, because I listened to this track over and over and over for months, just like on repeat. And just the times of just spacing out, listening to that soundscape and getting lost in it, and just it just takes you on such a journey. Even if that was the only part of that song that existed, it would still be an epic composition.
Yeah, that's the thing about that track. It's just so jam-packed.
But then you get the other things about it that make it so cool, like what Jim was talking about, where you get just this contrast of simplicity in that section and then complexity in the second guitar solo, where during that guitar solo, it is just in 4/4, but with all these things that Neil's adding in at seemingly random times, it makes it feel like it's in a different time signature, that it's constantly changing just because of the way they're accenting the music and the way that Alex is playing with almost this reckless abandon. And I love it's just so dissonant. It's so not taking you in the directions you would think it should go. And it's just so cool. And then it feels like everything's just falling apart. And then all of a sudden, boop, 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 doo, doo, doo.
It's seriously like it does light up the classical musician inside of me. It's just in line with that same kind of composition.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really dang cool.
Yeah. And that's why I think why I will stand by my statement from the beginning that this is, to me, one of the greatest compositions of all time. Not because it's so technically groundbreaking, not because it's pushing so many boundaries, and not because it's going to be something that people will look to say like this truly changed the course of composition or anything, but because it's something that drew upon a well-established art form. They put their Rush spin on it. They stayed true to themselves. They had they kept a consistent form of composition, and then they were able to do it in such a way that wasn't going to be a huge turnoff to people in the rock world, but also not a turnoff to people in the classical music world. It's a way to kind of bridge the gaps, and it's just so successful in its composition, in the fact that it's so accessible from the start, but then the more that you dig into it, there's just more to appreciate about it. There's more layers that you're never going to get tired of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what, to me, makes a great composition, because there's plenty of stuff that's being composed now and that's been composed over the past century that is super cool, and it's really great to dig into, and it really has pushed the boundaries and really laid groundwork for the future of composition. But it's extremely difficult to get into from the start. You have to go into it knowing that it's going to be difficult, knowing that it's going to require you to listen analytically, so that you can try to piece together what's going on. And you have to have a background of some level of music theory and music understanding so that you can appreciate it, which isn't a bad thing, but it's a lot more of a chore to get to the point where you can be like, this is super cool.
Well, that's not to say, you have to have those things to appreciate it, of course, but
yeah,
that level though that you're talking about, it's
but there
different.
are definitely things that, especially from that time period where Rush was composing, if you go over to the classical music world, of the things that were being composed there, and it was a lot of the stuff there, it's hard for people who aren't in that world to get into it.
Connect the dots.
Yeah.
Connecting the dots. That's fair.
And so that's what I'm saying is
okay.
what makes this such a successul composition is
for
that
those
it's
reasons.
instantly accessible to both sides.
To both sides of the spectrum. I see what you're saying now.
But it will continuously give enough real food for thought. Yeah. It's not just like a fluffy thing. It's not just something that's going to fade over time. I think it's something that's going to consistently draw people to it and consistently give you little nuggets that you are going to appreciate more, just like you would from a masterwork in classical music. There's always going to be more stuff you can learn from it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's almost like I want to go and do a score study of this. Can we find a full score? I'm sure it's still somewhere. But anyway.
Actually, so I brought this up before, but I forgot about this. So Cygnus Productions, Rush Tablature Project. I think it's cygnusproductions.com/RTP. I can't remember if it's .com or something else, but I think that's what it is. But the Rush Tablature Project, where it's just a group of people if you've ever found a Rush tab online, it's most likely from that someone's posted somewhere else, because they have the most accurate tablature online. and they're continually being refined. But what I actually, in GarageBand years and years ago, when I was first getting into GarageBand and messing around, I actually took La Villa Strangiato and I started putting in all the parts to it. And so in essence, I didn't know at the time that's what I was doing, but essentially doing a score study because I was being able to see all the different
So
parts
cool.
and how they interacted. But
Well,
yeah,
I have to pick this track.
yeah.
I mean, I would have anyway, but that's really cool, and I definitely want to dig more and more into this track and the other track too. Even though we didn't choose it, like dig deep into the main Monkey business too. Like, definitely don't sleep on that. And this has been a really fun conversation, and I'm glad we got through it. I was sweating a little bit at the beginning. I was like, I have no idea how this is going to happen. So I'm really glad that we made it. That is the last pairing of this bracket of instrumentals. That's crazy.
Yeah.
It felt like a lot faster because our previous bracket had like 14 weeks.
Yeah, that was
took a long time. It was fun. It was fun though.
Yeah.
But so now that we have our final pairing decided of La Villa Strangiato, that means that coming up soon.
Yeah, so this is dropping Tuesday. So that means on Friday, we will have our bracket overview.
Yes.
And
our final decision.
Have to make our final decision.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, our final decision of the instrumental bracket will be decided after this episode.
Mm-hmm.
That will be interesting. It's always fun to recap a bracket, and so we will see you guys. Well, you'll hear us then.
Yeah.
We're looking forward to that, and we've really enjoyed this bracket. It's been a really good bracket, and we are again so grateful for all of the interviews.
Mm-hmm.
And
definitely,
we want to have more and more of them. So
yeah. So whenever we figure out what bracket we're going to do after this one,
because we don't even know yet.
I have a couple that I'm
that we've been
going
deciding.
to next. But yes, once we figure that out and we figure out how we want to do our interview episodes, like what kind of direction we want to go to, we'll definitely let you guys know, and we'll be reaching out to people because I think the interviews added a lot to our appreciation.
I hope you guys liked
these
them.
Songs.
I thought they were awesome. I wasn't able to join in all of them, but the ones that I was, it was so fun.
Yeah, definitely.
All Rush fans are cool guys and girls. Obviously, not all guys, because there are obviously girls.
Yeah.
Like we had Vicky on, and anyway, they're all really cool, chill people. Like I feel like every Rush fan that we've met online, we don't even bother like going through pleasantries. We're just like, oh, we're friends now.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like especially like when we connected with Rush fans, the Instagram account Rush fans and their YouTube, we're just like, yep, we're friends. We're gonna collab, and this is just because Rush just connects people.
Yeah, which I think, I mean, it speaks to the impact that they've had, and showing that it's okay to like things that the mainstream doesn't like. That it's okay that it's okay to get fanatical about something as long as you're not like going off the deep end and like pushing it on everybody, or just like getting ridiculous about it, like still being level-headed. And I think it's made being an outcast from society cool, because I mean that's the story of Rush, that they weren't doing the cool thing, and that then became cool.
Hi.
You want to say bye-bye to everybody?
Can you say bye-bye? Our little dude just came in. Can you say bye? Say bye-bye. No. He's just going to breathe into the mic. You need to know. All right, well, we better sign off because...
Bye.
You want to turn the lights on?
But thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to breaking down this whole bracket next time. Until then, thank you for joining us on the Rush Discussion.
Goodbye.
Bye.